If you asked me to watch a shounen, my first answer would most likely be a question. Why? Because in a world where shounen is so popular, half of the shows are often just the same stuff copy-pasted with a different look. And although that is basically the premise of any type of media, I still think a show needs to have its own strong point that draws me in for me to actually want to watch it. Some have insane levels of animation, others have captivating world building, whilst others have flawless writing. For Soul Eater, well, one, the cover art has a girl with a massive scythe, which is cool as fuck, and also that exam scene which I saw on Instagram Reels and thought, maybe I should watch this. And so I did. Honestly? Soul Eater's main premise is a bunch of students in the Death Weapon Meister Academy, also known as the DMWA for short, playing basketball and undergoing unpaid child labor. These students are classified into weapons and meisters, which honestly sounds like some underground slavery scheme. In reality, some of the students could just turn into weapons, whilst the meisters use those weapons. The weapon type students aim to become death scythes, which, in simple terms, is a weapon that is qualified to be used by Death, who's the founder and headmaster of the DMWA. For said weapon to achieve this, they must capture 99 evil human souls, which are just people that did something bad enough to be considered evil, to stop them from developing into Kishins, more on that later, in the case that they consume enough regular innocent human souls. To top off the criteria, a weapon needs to also capture one witch soul, which is where we get introduced to fan service, the absolute unnecessary staple of the shonen demographic and genre, ranging from simple animation to complex mechanical physics that even a 4-year master's degree can't explain. And let me make it clear, Soul Eater doesn't have that much fan service. Just make sure not to watch any of the first few episodes in public, or even worse, on an 8-hour flight like my friend did. Because when I say the bath scene in the first episode was crazy, I mean it. Because I was genuinely astonished at the level of human flexibility that Blair possesses. Although when you do think about the fact that she can turn into a cat, it probably makes a bit more sense. The first few episodes of the show take time to introduce us to if you look at any of the male main cast, your first thought will probably be, shit, they're cool. Death the Kid has 2 women that turn into dual guns and he hits the hardest poses based on symmetry. That's cool. Soul can turn into a literal scythe that Maka can wield, forming the iconic girl with oversized scythe combo. That's also cool. Black Star on the surface seems annoying, but I can't remember an episode featuring him that didn't increase my respect for him. That's pretty cool too. The characters themselves aren't something generationally unique or outstanding, but they have their own little quirks that I'd go as far as saying made me like them a lot more than other shonen main casts. I do also really like their individual designs. They serve well because, well, they are kinda unique, and don't get me started on how many iconic poses came from Soul Eater. And look, if you show me a character and my first honest reaction to them is, they're fucking cool, then I probably end up liking the character. Like, Death the Kid is obsessed with symmetry and falls to his knees the moment he remembers about his non-symmetrical hair stripes, only to then also remember that his 2 guns in their human form also have varying heights and slightly varying hair color, meaning they also aren't symmetrical. I don't know about you, but Death the Kid speaks to me in a way that no other characters before. He summarizes the struggles of trying to be cool but having underlying struggles that force you out of such lifestyle, ones that you can't do anything about. Born to have a crazy physique but forced to lose weight even when I eat an industrial ton of rhino meat. Born to be attractive but I'm 5'7" and have thin hair that's hard to style. These types of things sometimes make me fall to my knees, but then I remember that Death the Kid goes through these struggles too, and it empowers me to keep pushing through my day. Oh, and Patty's low-key autistic and I fuck with that. Okay, enough of that. It's time to actually go over having failed to capture the last witch soul that they needed to turn his soul into a death scythe, since Blair wasn't actually a witch and she was just able to turn into a cat, Soul and Mako was sent on a mission alongside Black Star and his weapon Sabaki and the very symmetrical trio to casually fight the guy who is deemed, and I shit you not, the most powerful Meister to ever graduate from DMWA. And I don't know about you, but maybe it isn't a good idea to send literal children to take on this guy? Oh yeah, but luckily it's revealed that this threat is actually Dr. Stein, who, beyond being my favorite character from the whole show, actually just ends up enrolling as a teacher in DMWA, and the whole thing was a setup by Death. Directly after, Maka and Soul get sent to Italy of all places, which leads them to go up against Krona, who's the Meister of a demon sword Ragnarok, who, unlike other Meister and weapon combos, is actually imbued into Krona's body in the form of black blood. And to nobody's surprise, Maka and Soul get absolutely fucked up by Krona, with Soul suffering a deadly cut to the chest. This sets off Maka's "I'm so guilty, it's all my fault" response, where she feels responsible for Soul getting fucked up. And this is probably one of the few things I dislike dislike about Soul Eater. No matter how much I like her voice actor, Maka still doesn't fail to piss me off. She's one of those characters that makes things into much bigger problems than they are. Like, later on in the show, Maka has an argument with Blackstar because he trains by himself and seemingly gets ahead of the rest of the group, completely oblivious of the fact that she isn't even that much weaker than the rest. It's just that she doesn't have the right mindset. I mean, she did get domed in the face afterwards though, so I guess it's all fine. Okay, now let's return to... Soul getting cut by Krona resulted in some of the black blood infecting him, which honestly could just be an analogy for getting infected with AIDS, but for Soul it just meant that he had a demon living inside of him like 50 other characters. Naruto, Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen, Nier Replicant, although I like that one, we can overlook it. And even Krona in the exact same show are all examples of the same exact trope. Well, I guess on second thought, it makes sense since Krona is where the black blood that got into Soul originally came from, and like, the two demons look nothing like each other, so it raised the question if the black blood is like some sort of manifestation of a demon within one's body, or if Soul's demon is just a part of Ragnarok, but Ragnarok is like looking different because he's fused with Soul, who's already a weapon, and Soul isn't a Meister or whatever. Although Google told me that is a type of corruption, which in some way it makes sense, but the trope is overused. But then again, Soul low-key rocks that suit well enough for me to fuck with it. We fast forward a bit and it turns out the school nurse is not only a snake, which was probably obvious with her name literally being Medusa, but she's also a witch. You know, like the DMWA's biggest enemies? Yeah, she's one of those. And then we also find out that Medusa experimented on her own child to test the effects of black blood, which is a bit fucked up, but hey, anything to revive... We find out that underneath the DMWA resides the Kishin. Kishin is a sort of demon god that comes from when someone consumes too many of innocent and pure human souls, which leads to them being corrupted. The reason there's a Kishin under the DMWA is because that Kishin is actually Death's first son, Asura, that was corrupted by madness. Death confined himself to the DMWA to keep the Kishin trapped under it, meaning if the Kishin were to somehow be released from this bullsack that he lives in, Death wouldn't be able to do anything, as he cannot physically leave the territory of the DMWA. Knowing this, our favorite and kind Medusa decides to crash the first anniversary party of the DMWA, using the Hada no Kyuji that she learned from Aizen off screen to conveniently only allow our main cast of kids and an honorary Stein to try and stop her. Unfortunately, they fail. Asura is revived and Death isn't able to stop him without a weapon, but thankfully, Maka managed to speak out to Krona and help him. You see, Krona had suffered from being alone and insecure, feeling like he's not enough, seeing as his own mother manipulated and ignored him when he needed someone to help him the most. Maka understood Krona and was willing to help him and be there for him during the times of dark. Krona decided to retire his sword and be locked in a jail cell for the next 20 episodes. Dog, free my boy Krona, bro, he did nothing wrong. And then Medusa also seemingly dies in the whole ordeal, thanks to Stein being cool as fuck, but you know, it would be too convenient if she actually died, so... A tiny bit later in the show, Medusa returns by abducting the body of an innocent child to hopefully be able to team up with Arachne. Who the hell is Arachne? Oh right, okay. Yeah, I should probably explain that. So due to the Kishin spreading his madness, Arachne's soul, which she hid inside of a golem somewhere in the Czech Republic after being defeated by Death many years ago, reawakened, with her goal being to defeat Death. Yeah, I don't know what else you were thinking it would be, but Medusa is basically just rejected by Arachne due to her literally betraying her in the past. So what does Medusa do? Yep, that's right, she walks on right over into the DMWA talking about an alliance. You know, the place that takes witches as their greatest enemies? Yeah, she walks into that. But Arachne's awakening wasn't the only thing that was caused by the Kishin's madness. Stein was also succumbing to his own madness and was therefore paired with one of the other Death Scythes who were all gathered by Death in order to take down the Kishin. This Death Scythe, Marie, has a calming effect on Stein's soul, which is why the two of them got paired. We then get introduced to a relic called the Brew that our, as always, favorite main cast are sent out to reclaim before Arachnophobia, who's ruled by Arachne, are able to. But they unfortunately get stopped by an old man crossbred with a mosquito, even though despite all of the training and new moves that the squad pulled out on him. Don't worry, because as it turns out, Medusa actually had the real brew, and the one Arachnophobia got was fake. And this is the part where the anime caught up to the manga, and unlike most other studios who simply bloat the anime with filler episodes while they wait for the manga to have new original content, Studio Bones decided, fuck that, let's do our own thing, and they made the rest of the anime by themselves. Obviously, it follows up from the current point in the anime, and it finishes the story, but whether it's better or worse than the manga is a different question. Although if you did tell me that the anime and manga were the exact same, I would have probably believed you because the anime does a pretty good job progressing. But if it did a good job of ending it, I'll discuss that later. It delves into the mystery behind the brute and the relation between death and the inventor of it, and Soul finally steps up as the bigger and greater man he is and plays the piano like it's light work. Although the one thing I do want to mention now is, if you take a look at the rating for the last few episodes of Soul Eater, you'll see that it suddenly drops at episode 51, which happens to also be the last episode. I'm 99% sure that you'd instantly assume that the ending was bad or unsatisfying, which wouldn't be far from the truth. To summarize, Asura regains most of his powers and becomes basically undefeatable, to the point that Kid and Blackstar collectively use all of their strongest moves and do no damage to Asura. None. Then when Maka and Soul finally start fighting, they also use their most powerful move, and to no one's surprise, it also does absolutely nothing. But don't worry, right as they're all about to lose, Maka actually develops the ability to turn into a weapon, which for someone who isn't a Meister isn't possible. Then Maka tells him some bullshit about how courage always overcomes the madness of fear and just punches Asura in the face. You know, I would consider this seeing as a literal anti-demon ability called the Genie Hunter. Didn't even scratch Asura, that a punch would do fuck all. But would you look at that? Asura is destroyed and never to be seen again. Like, man, why didn't they just think of that earlier? Of course, courage is the key to overcoming madness, since everyone has courage in their hearts. And how stupid am I for not predicting that, seeing as I have courage in my heart? Man, I really must be blind to have not realized this earlier. But yeah, no, the ending is a bit ass. The show has this immense build-up for Asura becoming this unbeatable god that no one can even land a hit on, all for him to just be defeated by what's basically just a reskinned power of friendship. It's a lazy cop-out after driving yourself into a corner for making the main villain too overpowered when your main cast is already too overpowered. I didn't even mind the fact that Maka awakened to her weapon powers randomly during the final fight because, yeah, that's cool. Maybe she's been a weapon her whole life, and I honestly would have been fine if it just turned out that her weapon powers were somehow just powerful enough to take down Asura, like it's some anti-Kishin ability. But on top of that, they just had to drop the ultimate, my heart is stronger than your evil, which just seemed very out of place and out of character for. All in all, Soul Eater is one of those shows that you look at and think, hell yeah. Girl with big scythe, kid with 2 guns aura farming, annoying kid who just turns out to be the absolute goat, a cool ass teacher struggling to keep himself sane, and man, even the cover art all looks so cool. All the character designs look unique and distinguishable, and the voice actors do an amazing job, and I'd go as far as saying that the story has its own unique charm, despite having many repeated aspects, but the ending just takes away from so much of that built-up charm. It honestly could have easily been one of those anime that you finish and just sit there thinking, fuck, that was insane, but instead, I was just sat there disappointed. If there's one thing that's worse than a bad first impression, it's a bad final impression, and Soul Eater just happened to leave a bitter one for me. It's like being given the best steak of your life, and then right as you're finishing it, it's taken from you. You're slapped in the face and told the real food is the one you make with love. Of course, the anime diverts from the manga around the 36th episode, so maybe once I pick up the manga, I'll regain some of the love I had for Soul Eater until that final episode. Honest to God, I've really enjoyed Soul Eater, and it still stands out to me among many other shonen, and I'd even say that it's so close to being almost perfect, and definitely would have stayed as one of my favorite shows if it wasn't for that goddamn ending. But hey, at the end of the day, it's about the journey and not the destination, so I stay winning. First off, if you made it this far in the video, I honestly really want to thank you, because I feel as though this video is a bit of a letdown and it didn't come out as good as I was expecting it to. And considering how well my previous video did, this one probably is a letdown for many people that are watching it. But I don't really want to give excuses for it, but I have been insanely busy in my first month of uni, and hopefully soon enough I'll kind of get more into a rhythm and I'll be able to actually edit videos. And believe it or not, there is a continuation to the previous romance video that I do want to make at some point. When I'm making it, I don't know, but hopefully there'll be some more videos that are a bit better than this one pretty soon. Thank you for staying by, and have a great rest of your day.